So if you're in Ireland and you're considering going to the Aran Islands, I would highly recommend it. So this is going to be a quick little guide of how to do the Aran Islands, what you can see on them, how to get around them, which one to go to, and ultimately anything else I think you need to know about planning this trip. So it works as a pretty great day trip. The Aran Islands are about 20 to 25 miles off the coast of Galway, and in Ireland, it's a really interesting landscape. You go there, it looks very different. You have these kind of fence rows made of stone everywhere in the whole island, and it's a very unique culture there. Like, a lot of the people there only speak Gaelic. They don't speak English. There are plenty of people who do speak some English, but it just feels a lot different, a lot older than mainland Ireland. Now, if you're going to go there, there are several ways you can get there. My recommendation is to go to the largest island, Inis Mor, using the Aran Islands Ferry Company. I have no affiliation with them. I paid with my own money. It was about 55 euros after taxes and fees per person to go there, which sounds expensive, but it was actually a fantastic tour, and I'll explain how that works in a second. But you start in Galway. It's about an hour and a half boat ride out there. Anyone who gets seasick, you might want to consider taking a Dramamine or something. The seas, depending on the weather, can get a little rough, and some people on our boat did not feel well. The boat seems to hold maybe like 300-ish people. I'm not really good at estimating that, but it's a fairly large vessel, and I had a great time on there. It's a double-decker. On the top, you get some incredible views. Out of the port of Galway, you can see like the Salt Hill Prom in the distance. You see the islands as you're approaching them, and like I said, it's about an hour and a half. There's a bar on board as well, so you can buy alcoholic drinks or you can buy coffee. And this, like I said, is going to generally be a day trip for most people. So the ferry leaves at 9:30 in the morning from Galway, and you arrive out there at about 11 o'clock in the morning. When you get to Inis Mor, it's kind of like a little town when you first land. The port is kind of in like a small town, and I'll talk about what's in the town later, but in general, you've got like restaurants, a little grocery store, some sweater shops, and things like that. To get around the island, you really have four main options. You could walk it. I wouldn't really recommend this unless you're really on a budget, because it is about 4 to 8 miles long, depending on which road you take, and about 2 miles wide. So there's definitely a lot of walking, and unless you just want to see the town, it's unlikely you'll see really any significant amount of the island in the amount of time you have, because this day trip gives you about 4.5 hours on the island. The second way you can get around is with bus tours. When you get off the boat, there are tons of buses sitting there. They're more like large, maybe 15 passenger vans, maybe 20 passenger vans, and they'll be like trying to sell you tickets. A lot of them are hop on, hop off, so you'll get on the bus, go to whichever destination you want, get off, wander around, get on maybe a different bus from the same company, and that's just a way that they do that. I didn't take the buses, but if you're not really as mobile and you want to see a lot of the island in a short amount of time, that could be a great way to do it. The third one is a horse-drawn carriage. Pretty unique, but given the weather in Ireland, it does rain very often or drizzle a lot, so they had plastic clear tarps on either side. When it was drizzling, or even right after it was done drizzling, the visibility didn't seem that great in there, so if you want to do it, it's a pretty cool experience, I would imagine, but you're not going to have the same visibility as the fourth option, which is what I did, which I would highly recommend, which is renting bikes. You could either rent a regular bike, and these were about 20 euros, or you can rent an e-bike for 40 euros. Now, when you get your bike, they rent them so often. These bikes are very, very heavily used. I highly recommend you get it and just ride just like maybe 5 minutes or so just around the area to test out your bike, make sure all the gears shift well, make sure the brakes work, because, for example, my sister's bike was stuck in one gear, the derailleur didn't work, and she didn't really realize that until we got to a hill several miles later. The e-bikes are not the best quality e-bikes, but they're definitely good enough, and they really do save you if you plan on going up any hills. You don't have to go up any hills, and there are really three main roads that are pretty parallel. I'll try to show you guys a map right here on the island. So if you're following the coast, there's really no hills at all. With or without an e-bike, this is going to be a breeze. It's a fairly easy bike ride, and it gives you a lot of great views of the ocean on one side, and of course you can still see all the landscape on the other, all the cattle, all the sheep and everything like that, as well as the really unique fence rows that I mentioned earlier in the video. So when you're riding, what are the points of attraction you want to look at? This is important in considering which of those four methods you really want to use to get around the island. So if you're following that first road that goes along the coast, which is what I did, it first, like I said, gives you a nice view. The first stop that you might take is going to be the seal colony. So there are a bunch of seals that live generally in the same spot there on the island, and it's pretty neat to see them. They're not super far away. They're definitely close enough you can see them. You can take some pictures, and they're just kind of fun to look at. As you continue, there is a goat farm that was closed when I was there. It seemed like a kind of a touristy attraction, so I didn't really check it out too much, but there is a bathroom there if you need to use the bathroom. That was kind of a benefit of having that there. Continuing on, there is a beach on the right side, obviously, because that's where the ocean is, and the beach is actually really nice. There's very white sand there. If you bring swim attire, you can swim there. I saw several people swimming in the beach when I arrived. I didn't have any swimwear, and we were kind of tight on time. And by this point, we had gone about 4 miles. Considering the stops, it took a little while to get there, but we were still making pretty good time. The next stop, we wanted to go all the way up to what's called the 7 Churches. If I were to recommend an itinerary that's tight on time, I would probably skip this one, given that there are a lot of abbeys and churches we saw on mainland Ireland. And this one was really historic, really interesting, really unique, but given our time constraints, it just kind of stretched us a little thin on time. Coming back then, a lot of people might have just selected to go back on that easy road on the way back, but we wanted to do something a little more interesting, so there are 2 other roads. The middle one is going to be what they would call a little bit more strenuous. You are going up some hills. The road is still fairly well paved, so all the roads I've mentioned so far, easy to ride on and paved. We didn't do that. Instead, we wanted to go to what is called the Wormhole. Now, there are really 2 main attractions on the west side or the southwest side of the island. One is going to be the enormous cliffs, which you can go ride up to. Or what we did is we went to the Wormhole, which gives you a great view of the cliffs and also a really unique and interesting geologic feature that I thought was fascinating. Obviously, everyone has different interests, but the way this works is you ride several miles over. It was a very rough road, so more like cobblestone with some grass growing in it. And so we rode around. It wasn't super well marked, but when we got there, it was pretty obvious we were there. There were little painted signs once you started getting close that said Wormhole this way. So you bike, you park, and then you have to hike probably about maybe a mile, a little bit less than a mile perhaps. So it's maybe a 15 to 25 minute hike, and that'll bring you over to the Wormhole. Now, during this hike, if you're not really good on your feet, you may want to skip this because you're walking on some rocks. I think most people would have no problem with that, but again, anyone who has challenges with mobility, you really want to second guess doing this one. But when you get there, like I said, you have this gigantic rectangular, it looks like a huge swimming pool that was naturally formed and is filled on the bottom through like kind of a mini cave that the ocean comes in and fills up. So it looks really neat. You shouldn't swim in there. I'm not recommending you swim in there, but they did have the Red Bull World Series of Diving, I think, there several years ago. So cliff diving was a thing that they did, obviously under professional supervision, but overall just a really cool thing. For me, I thought that was kind of the highlight of the island. I've just never seen a geologic feature like that. So hiking back from here, I would highly recommend biking on either the easiest road all the way on the northeast or the middle road. Like I said, those are paved and those are going to be significantly better. But if you're up for a challenge, it may be like you can do what I did. I turned right and I went on the furthest southwest road. This is a big hill you're going to ride up. So with an e-bike, pretty much a breeze. Without an e-bike, you're going to be working for this one. It's definitely a hill. And when you get to the top, there are maybe 6 or 7 roads that cut over that'll bring you back to that center road. If you go towards, I think it's the 5th one where you'll turn left, you'll see that there is a really cool tower on the top that you can actually go over and check out. Now, at this point, you're pretty much at the end of the 4 hours and you really want to work your way back to the ferry. But if you didn't do that, some other attractions, there are 3 more that are on the southern point, kind of a little peninsula on the island. 2 of them are churches. 1 of them is a fort. I didn't have time to go check those out. But if you're interested in that, that is definitely an opportunity. You could go down there. The roads are not going to be as well maintained going that way. So again, keep that in mind. Now, talking about that town, there are a lot of little like smaller restaurants there. They looked like they had some pretty good food. There is only 1 grocery store on the whole island. So if you need any food and you want to take it to go, maybe a sandwich or something like that for your bike ride, I would highly recommend stopping there. I stopped there, got a bunch of food, and it was definitely worth it. Now, remember I mentioned the ferry was 55 euros per person, and it was actually, in my opinion, a good deal. So far, it might seem like just a ride out and back might not be a good deal. Well, it is actually a pretty interesting deal when you consider the ride back. So an hour and a half to the island, but it takes 2 hours and 15 minutes to get back to the mainland. And the reason for that is because you actually go past the other Aran Islands. So there are 3 islands. You get to see the medium-sized one and the smallest one. On them, you'll see a castle, you'll see some forts, you'll see a really cool shipwreck on there, as well as a lighthouse. And then you work your way over to the cliffs of Mor. And the cliffs, while you're there, you get like really nice photos. They pull up broadside while you're turning. If there are rough seas, again, you might really feel some swells there. But here they'll tell you about the history. They'll tell you about like where it was moved, where they'll tell you about like what movies it was used in, maybe like famous cliffs from like the Harry Potter, Dumbledore scenes, whatever. And they'll also talk about like the wildlife, migration, and different things. So you learn a lot while you get to see the cliffs. And personally, I think it's better than seeing the cliffs from above. Many people drive up to the top of the cliffs. And while it is really neat up there, you're going to have significantly more tourists, and you don't get to see, all of the cliff as you go along it in the boat. So I thought that was really neat. I definitely think that was a good value in the ferry. And then you work your way back to the Port of Galway, and you'll end up getting back probably around 6 o'clock in the evening. So like I said, that's a pretty long day. I would highly recommend doing it if you can afford it and if you have the time to do it. And I thought it was one of the highlights of my time in Ireland. Obviously, Galway is a really cool city as well, so it's perfect time to get back and go out and check out some pubs or some local food. So if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching. I'll be making more travel videos just like this one very soon.